Hey there, it's Brian Goulet here of gouletpens.com. And if my audio sounds a little bit different today, it's because if you watched the media team Q&A from last week, I mentioned that there was some audio difficulties that we had because our microphone, the line mic that I usually clip and hide and clip on, died. So I'm using a shotgun mic that I've got kind of off to the side here. So it might sound a little bit different than it usually does. I'm especially sorry to you podcast listeners who might sound a little different than usual. We're currently shopping around. I have some mics that I've ordered and they should be here today, but they're just not going to get here in time for the Q&A, so it's going to sound a little different, so I apologize for that. But anyway, this is Goulet Q&A episode number 70. It is Friday the 13th, so hopefully all goes smoothly with the publishing of this. I'm actually shooting this on the 12th, so hopefully the recording will go pretty smoothly, but as far as the publishing goes, who the heck knows? Friday the 13th. I don't know how superstitious you are. I'm not that superstitious, but we have a couple people's birthdays tomorrow here at the Goulet Pen Company, so we're giving them some hassle about having a birthday on Friday the 13th. Not that really matters, but anyway. So yeah, I've been up to some stuff the last week. We did shoot the media Q&A video last week. It was a very different kind of format than what we've done before, but it was cool to get to introduce you to all of our team. So if you didn't check out episode 69, go do that. It was really cool. You got to see all the people who are behind the magic of actually publishing all of this cool stuff that we do here. So that was pretty fun to get to show everybody that, get to show our team that we work with every day. It's pretty fun. We've been up to some other stuff. Yeah, we've launched Filofax notebooks and since sold them all out, and we're waiting to get more. I'll talk about that because I have a question about it. And then we got Lamy Rollerballs in as well. That one is something that we've actually been talking about for a long time, and we didn't really give you any heads up that we were going to be doing that. We've had them for over a month in our possession. We've been photographing them, getting them ready, shooting video and whatnot. So that kind of slipped under the radar a little bit, and it's like, boom, okay, we've got all the Safaris and All-Stars in the rollerball form now. No big deal. But it actually has been kind of a big deal for us behind the scenes. So now we're introducing that. Seems to be pretty well received. We're not looking to sell our soul as fountain pens at all. Rollerballs are really just kind of the gateway to get people to fountain pens. That's how it was for me when I initially started out. I know a lot of you have had that same kind of experience. Just coming from the ballpoint world, you don't realize that life can be better. And for a lot of people, the rollerball is kind of the first introduction into that enhanced writing experience. So, then fountain pens, of course, is like dive into the deep end. But anyway, rollerballs are something that we're exploring a little bit. We do have another product announcement that's going to be coming soon. None of you know that this is coming, and I'm not going to reveal what it is, but it's going to be pretty exciting. It's something that I know is going to be a big hit, so I'm really excited about it. We've been working on it for a long time, so look to see more about that in the next week or two. We should have some more. And then just internally, we've had some cool stuff going on. Oh, sorry, I did want to get your feedback on one thing. So last week, we had posted a blog post of a bunch of discontinued products. We had a lot of discontinued Monteverde pens and some other various things that either had, either a price change or were being discontinued and we were clearing out, things like that. So I used to do a lot of those posts on the blog back when it was Ink Nouveau, early days, first year or two. I used to do a lot of very timely, hey, this is product news type stuff, not just full-on reviews and tips and tricks and stuff, but it was just more, just quick hit, hey, this thing is going to be coming in next week, blah, 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 blah. We kind of got away from that in the last couple of years, just mainly for time's sake, but I'm thinking of bringing back more of that kind of stuff. We got a pretty good response from the discontinued products post that we did there, so I'd love to get some of your feedback on that. Is that something that's of value to you? Should we spend our time, doing that kind of stuff? I do some product announcements and updates and stuff that are in the Q&A here, but it might be helpful to have it more in a written blog post form. You can click through on links and get information that way. So I don't know, just kind of trying to figure out what do we spend our time doing, because we've only got so many hours in a day and I want to give you the most bang for your buck. So I would like some feedback about that. Just internally here, before I get all into the questions, we got two new folks that we hired here at Goulet, Bryce and Luke. They're going to be on our fulfillment team, and they're going to be starting here next week on Monday. Pretty excited about them, a couple of bearded fellows. So, the beard ratio is going up quite a bit around here, which I know several of our bearded individuals are quite happy about that. Me, this is about as bearded as I ever get, because Rachel pretty much has a moratorium on beards if I ever want to, be near her. So she doesn't like beards, which is okay, I guess. I'm not really like super all into like having a beard. I've really just, honestly, the last time I grew out any significant facial hair is when I was 17 years old. I was the madrigal king in my show choir, so I grew out a beard. And it was a respectable 17-year-old beard. It wasn't like this wispy little thing. As you can imagine, just looking at me, I'm a rather hairy fellow, so I was pretty hairy at 17 as well. But anyway, way too much information probably that you didn't need to know. But yeah, I did do show choir too, and yeah, I've got it on video as well at some point, so I'm sure you'd love to see that. But I don't know about that. We'll have to see. But anyway, so questions for this week. Got a bunch of good ones. Actually, I'm going to be breaking things down into categories, you know, kind of like I have been doing the last couple of weeks, not the episode 69 with the media team, but a couple of weeks before that. I've been kind of just segmenting, categorizing out some questions. So I'm going to try that this week too. This week I've got a new category that I've never done before called product updates. Really just because I ended up getting a bunch of questions that were just kind of these timely product update questions. So I'm going to kick it off with that and then get into more of the other stuff. So the first question I have is a product update. This one is from Andrew H. on Facebook. And Andrew asks, when would the seasonal Edison Nouveu Premier for the spring 2015 be announced? Very soon. So basically, you know, we're going to be hitting spring here pretty soon. Whenever we do a change of the seasons, we come out with a new seasonal Premier. I actually have it right here. I have one of the samples of it. It's right here. Doesn't it look pretty good? I mean, geez, we're really excited about this one, and I think it's going to be a great color for spring. I think it's really just going to capture kind of that nice spring essence that you're going to love so much. So, you know, this obviously isn't the official reveal. You know, I've got it right here. It's like I could just pull it out right now and just show it to you. It's like, there it is. You know, but I'm not going to do that because I want to do an official release with Rachel. That's kind of how we've been doing it ever since we started back in the winter of 2014. So that was winter premiere, like I guess it was kind of end of 2013, early 2014. I don't know. But, you know, started Black Ice was the first one, and then we did, you know, I won't name them all because I feel like I'm going to forget something. So it's coming out in the next couple of weeks. So look out for that. It's going to be exciting. Next question I have is from Carmen C. on Facebook. Carmen, is there going to be a special edition Safari this year or just the All-Star? Very timely question here. So Lamy just released the Copper Orange All-Star. I wish I had one to show you. All the other retailers out there are getting them right now, but we placed a rather large order for it and it ended up coming in a freight shipment. This is the first freight shipment that we've ever gotten from anything from Lamy. So we didn't really expect that. Freight shipments take longer, so we're sitting here and we still don't have the pens, so that's kind of frustrating. So I apologize if you've been waiting for it and you're really antsy. The one thing I can guarantee is once we get it, we're going to have plenty of them because we ordered a ton, but it does mean that we're going to get them a couple days late besides everybody else. Now that plus a lot of the weather has just been crazy and things have been getting held up left and right, so it is going to be coming. Anyway, so we're actually going to be getting the Copper Orange, which is the 2015 special edition All-Star, which looks amazing. I got a video on that already, so go check that out. Maybe you can link up to that, Jenny. And then I've got the black that's coming back, which I actually have that I can show you. The black is pretty cool. I realize now I have to speak in this direction. Okay, so the black All-Star, very stealthy, black clip, black nib. It's like all decked out. So that's really cool. I'm excited about this one. I was really excited about it. It was a seasonal special edition pen 2 years ago, and now it's coming back as a regular line. That's coming in the same shipment with that one. But you're not asking me about any of that stuff. You're asking me about the Lamy Safari. There is going to be a Lamy Safari. It's called Neon Green. I've only seen pictures. I haven't seen this one in person yet, so I can't really say. Lamy's got several different greens, so you know, I don't really know why they're doing another green, honestly. You know, I'm a big fan of Lamy. I like their stuff, but why they're doing another green and not a purple is just beyond me. Like, I want to see a purple Safari. And like, I just, you know, like a bright violet, like grape purple, you know, that kind of thing. So that's what I want. That's what I want, everybody. But, you know, I'm not really like up on the chain of command or anything with Lamy. So I'm kind of like you. I just get to like voice my opinion, and if anybody listens, probably not. But that's what I want. So neon green. It's coming. I think like late April. I don't know the exact release date. I know it's going to be a little bit more into the spring before that thing actually comes out. So we're gonna have Copper Orange All-Star literally like where I think we're supposed to receive the shipment like when this video is posting. But we are going to have to unpack it and all kinds of stuff. I don't think we're actually going to be able to launch it until Monday. That's what we put in the newsletter. It's really just up in the air because we need to see what the shipment is like and if there's any damage and all kinds of stuff. So that's the plan of the moment. Next question I have is from Will T on Facebook. Will asks, when are you getting more Filofax notebooks in? I thought I would get them early, but they were already sold out. Will, your biggest Canadian fan. Well, thanks, Will. Hi there up in Canada. So yes, the Filofax notebooks ended up being a big hit. We thought we stocked up pretty well. And with it's a completely new product, new brand like this, it's really hard to predict how they're going to sell, and they sold well. So that's encouraging. It'll be interesting to see once everybody actually gets them and then starts to use them and stuff to see, because I always use them and I have my opinions about them. I think it's a great notebook. I think it definitely has its place, and I think that this one in particular probably sold a little quicker than we thought because it's not just a fountain pen notebook. I think it's going to cross over into some of like the Rollerball, and just the name Filofax is probably more popular than I anticipated. So we missed the mark a little bit on that one, but we are stocking up. We are going to have some more in the next few days. Like, we've already got a shipment that we put in. It's on its way. I don't have a tracking number from them, so I don't know exactly what day it's coming. So I'm sorry about that, but it will be just another couple days. So hang in there, and then we're going to up our quantities and try and always keep them in stock. I think we'll be able to do that relatively quick period of time, like maybe after a couple of weeks, we'll have a very stable supply. It's always a challenge when we're launching a new product because it's like we don't know how it's going to be received. If we stock up like crazy, as if it's going to be a land rush, we could, if it doesn't sell, we could be sitting on them for a year. So we have to kind of balance it out, and it's always kind of like shooting in the dark a little bit. Zdez Z on Facebook has the next question. Can you give us your opinion on the iroshizuku mini 15 milliliter inks, and would you someday want to carry them? Yes, so I don't have them to show you. They're currently only in Japan right now. I don't even know if they're selling in Japan yet. I think they might be. I've only seen like one picture of them. But I know they're coming into the US. It's probably going to be later in the spring, late April, early May kind of thing. I don't have an exact date. I was originally told March, and then it got pushed back. So if you haven't noticed a trend, things tend to, when new products are released, it tends to be kind of inconsistent. So it's, and that's across brands. So I don't know exactly when they're coming, but basically it's a 15 ml bottle that is kind of this general shape of a Noodler's one. It's more like squared off and nicer looking, but it's kind of this taller type bottle, which I think is fairly practical for a 15 ml bottle. And it appears to have a pretty wide neck, so I don't know how many pens are going to fit in and stuff like that. When you have a 15 ml bottle, it's always hard to tell. But they look really nice, and it's a set of inks, and it looks like the colors they chose are going to be really nice. I think they did a good job with that, so it should be really, really cool. So I'm eager to see how that works out. But we will definitely carry them as soon as we can possibly get our hands on them. And the last question I have about product news is Aaron R. on Facebook. Do you have any updates on when the new Pelikan Edelstein Amethyst will be released? Yes, so Pelikan last year did a like ink of the year type thing. Like basically they built this website where you could go on and you could mix all these different colors together to get kind of your own custom mix, and then everybody would vote, and then whoever won with the most votes on their color that's the ink color that they would make. And Amethyst was one that won. It's a dark purple. I don't know exactly what it looks like. I haven't actually seen the ink yet, but I'm thinking it's going to be pretty cool. It should be kind of different from the rest of what they have in the line, so that's kind of neat. And Rachel's like super proud because even though the one that technically won was not her shade, she submitted one that was almost identical to that color that was finally selected. So she was like, yeah, she's got a little bragging rights there as far as like which color she thought would win anyway. But as far as when that's actually going to come in, I don't have an exact ETA. I think it's going to be later in the spring, probably in the next month or two. these things tend to get pushed back as well, so I don't know exactly. It could be summer before it actually arrives, but I think it's going to be, you know, later this spring. All right, next group of questions I have here is pens and writing. Okay, got a few of these ones, so let's get all into it. Poe L on Facebook said, I want to know whether you will carry a pen for writing on a surface that is not fountain pen friendly. If yes, what is your choice? You know, sometimes we cannot control what we have to write on. For example, poor quality exam paper. Yep, that is definitely the case. That's what I do. I carry a lot of different pens with me to be able to face whatever kind of scenario I'm in. I don't carry a ballpoint with me because I just pretty much refuse to use them. Rollerball is like the lowest that I will stoop to. That sounds really arrogant, but you know, I don't enjoy using a ballpoint, so I just don't do it. The Pilot G2 is kind of like my Bic pen, if you will, the Bic stick, you know, type. Sorry, I'm not trying to pick on Bic, but because you know, whatever. But so I'm really digging a hole here. I carry a variety of different pens. The one that, if like all else fails, I have a Lamy Safari Rollerball, you know, so that is kind of like my, if I need to use a receipt at a restaurant or a carbon copy form or something, it's rare that I have to use the Rollerball, but it's always nice to have as a fail-safe, or just to have it as, you know, hey, somebody asked to borrow a pen and I whip out a fountain pen. They're like, what? I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, well, it's okay. You can try it. And they're like, no, I don't want anything to do with that. It's like, all right, here's a rollerball. You know, I try to offer up to people to use a fountain pen, but if they just want nothing to do with it, that's why I've got a rollerball. So that's, you know, and I've got one other rollerball here. I've got a Lamy Swift. So that's kind of cool. It's a little matte black thing. So this is another rollerball option. We're not carrying this at Goulet Pens. I just got one for myself to just try it out. You know, it's like twice the price of a Safari. It's pretty cool, but you know, if you're interested in that, just leave a comment or something. You know, I'd like to know, because we're getting into rollerballs now. I don't want to dive in really deep, so we're dabbling in the Lamys right now. So whatever. If you like that, holler. But then other pens that I'll carry, you know, I've got a fine nib Pilot Metropolitan that is a good go-to for junky paper. The fine nib is really fine. I'll keep something like Noodler's Heart of Darkness in there as well, so that is a very bleed-resistant paper, feathering-resistant paper. Performs really well on cheap paper. So that works really well, that combination. I've got another one. I've got a Faber-Castell Basic with an extra fine nib. The extra fine Faber-Castells are pretty darn fine. It's pretty much about where that Pilot Metropolitan is. So it's a little fancier looking pen. You know, it's kind of neat. Got the carbon fiber look, so it's kind of slick. But that's one I keep as well for using on junkier paper. You know, a lot of times when I read a lot, so I take a lot of notes in books and stuff, and you never know the paper quality you're going to get with certain books. So this is kind of the one that I end up using for that. And then I've got a fine nib Pilot Custom 74, which has a pretty fine nib as well. And I think right now I've got Noodler's black in it. No, I think I have Aurora black in there right now, actually, which is not a particularly great ink for poor paper or whatever. But yeah, so that's kind of what I do, is I keep a combination of pretty fine nibs, inks that I know are pretty tame, and then a rollerball as a backup. Lori Arrowood on Twitter asked, what's your favorite pen that you don't sell? Oh, this is such a good question. I had to take it. So it was actually really tough because I have a lot of good ones. I have a lot of pens that I buy for myself to use that we're thinking about carrying, and in that category, you know, I've got, for example, a pen that I've been getting people asking me about it. I'm very seriously considering carrying it, but I just haven't gotten into it yet. It's a Waterman Careen. This is the Essential Silver, which it just looks just really almost a little bit gaudy, but I kind of like it for that reason. So it's very kind of flashy and very fancy looking. So I take this to like meetings I have with other CEOs if I know that they would be impressed by a pen, you know, and then I'll also bring like some other dumpy looking pen, which, you know, or like a Noodler's pen or something, just to, not that Noodlers are dumpy looking, but you know what I mean, like a less corporate pen, less corporate. I'm really like on fire with the grammar today. Anyway, so I will carry something like this. you know, for a while if I'm considering getting into it. You know, I've got some other ones in here, like some Faber-Castell. Faber-Castell's got a cool one. It's like a hexagonal wood pen. I just thought that was neat, so I picked that up. I don't know if we're going to carry that or not. I could show you all kinds of random stuff that I want to consider, but that's one like kind of route that I was going down as far as picking a pen like this. There's other ones that were like, you know, we used to carry but are discontinued for some reason. That's another one. Or there's other ones that are just brands that, you know, like Mont Blanc or whatever, that like don't want anything to do with us, but they do make some nice pens. You know, I've got a couple of those, so I was like, are some of those in there? Not really. You know, they make some decent stuff, but the one that I ended up settling on to answer this question is almost a little hard to talk about because I have an emotional tie to it. And some of you will probably remember this pen. This one is just is tough because it was discontinued, and it was not by my choice that it was discontinued. It was a Monteverde Invincia Deluxe Nighthawk. It was a pen that I worked with Monteverde to actually develop this pen. It was an exclusive that we had through GouletPens.com. And this pen is one of my favorites. We ended up having to discontinue it. I'll explain to you what this pen is. I'll zoom in a little bit. So this pen is, it's the same body as a Monteverde Invincia Deluxe. So it's a pretty hefty, pretty robust pen. But it's a matte carbon fiber with all black trim. And we kept, you know, all of the ornamentation very, very subtle. Not a lot of logoing and stuff like that. We wanted this to be a super stealthy pen. We ended up having to discontinue it after just a few pens because we were getting bubbles in the finish. We found out that, you know, Monteverde just had a devil of a time trying to get this so that you could have a flawless finish, and they just were never really able to get it figured out. So we had to discontinue making the pen, and that was really tough. So this one is my favorite pen that we don't carry. And if they could figure it out again, I would carry it in a heartbeat. But alas, here we sit. Okay, Julia LaBua on Twitter, hope I pronounced that right. Why do people carry 3+ pens with them every day? I'm new to fountain pens and struggling to understand why one pen isn't enough. Well, I've just showed you several of the pens that I carry with me every day, so you know, that might help to answer your question a little bit. When you said 3+ pens, I was almost thinking to myself like, man, only 3? What would I do with that? I'm just kidding. Really, I think it boils down to, there's kind of several different reasons. Because you can get different nib sizes on your pens. You know, you may have situations where you want different purposes for them. For example, if I'm addressing an envelope or something like that, I have a Pelikan M800 with a 1.5 millimeter stub. Now this is not very practical to use for general note-taking and just like small writing and stuff on cheap paper because the nib is so wide, so broad, but it makes the writing look very fancy, very elegant, very classy. So I like to use it when I'm doing things like addressing envelopes or signing my name sometimes and stuff like that. So that's why I carry that pen. Another pen, you know, I will have that has a flexible nib if I want to be able to use that, or a nib that has a little bit of give to it. Other pens, you know, I have a really fine nib on it if I'm using cheap paper. That might be the situation. So there's the nib thing. Some of it is just aesthetics. I like to use and look at different pens. When you really get into the hobby, you just like to do it. It's like, you could ask the same question about shoes. You know, why do you need more than one pair of shoes? Really, why do you? They're to cover your feet and to keep your feet from touching the ground. That's the point of shoes, right, in that way. But you can have a whole closet full of shoes for all kinds of different reasons. It's the same thing with fountain pens. There's an element of fashion to it. There's an element of utility. Some of it is just, you like to tinker and you've got different pens, ones that click certain ways, and you know, this one when you click it, like the clip goes down, and that's kind of neat. So when you're in a meeting and you're kind of bored, you can just like click your pen and kind of play with it. You know, so that might be a reason why you carry one pen over another. So there's all kinds of different things. Another reason, just a more general, like why have multiple pens? A lot of it would be to have different colors of ink. When I first got into fountain pens, I didn't have a lot of fancy pens. I'm flashing around all these fancy pens now because I've been in them for 5+ years, and I have access to all kinds of awesome pens being in the position that I am. But when I was just starting out and had a new baby and a mortgage and all this stuff, I had no money. So for me, it was like, let me get a bunch of cheap pens, a bunch of Preppies, a bunch of like Pelikan scripts. I had a bunch of those. I don't even carry those anymore, but you know, they were a cheap calligraphy pen. So I had a bunch of just lesser expensive pens that I would ink up with all different colors, because to me, it was all about the ink. Coming from the rollerball world, rollerballs write pretty nicely. Coming into fountain pens, you get the different nib sizes, but it's the ink. The ink is what just really gets me going. So I carry a lot of different pens. It's very rare that I will have the same ink in 2 different pens. It's almost not even possible. The only time that would really ever happen is if I'm really excited to use a new pen and I only have like one particular ink with me if I'm traveling, or if I'm, you know, at home and just I don't have it as an extensive ink collection at home as I do here at work. So I only have a few bottles of ink at home. Funny enough, because I end up inking up everything at work and then I bring it home, and I'm coming to work all the time, so I'm never at home for an extended period where I don't have access to come to work and get ink. But so that is kind of it. Another reason you might have it is to have like kind of decoys, you know, or less expensive pens that you may want to be able to loan out to people or give to people who are like, oh, a fountain pen, that's pretty cool. Can I try your, you know, $500 pen and spring the time? You know, no, why don't you, since you've never used a fountain pen before and you don't even know which end it writes out of, why don't you take this Pilot Metropolitan and go nuts? You know, so that might be a reason, if you really get deep into the hobby, that if you end up becoming kind of a fountain pen evangelist, if you will, which tends to happen sometimes when you really get into it, then you might want to carry a less expensive pen to be able to hand out to other people, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of different reasons to do it there, and that covers some of them. Anna M. on Facebook: can the Noodler's Conrad brush pens be filled with water and used as a watercolor brush, or is it specifically made for ink and the water would run through? It's not specifically made for ink. I mean, yeah, it is definitely made for ink, but the brush pens are a little looser, you know, than a fountain pen would be, so it flows more generously and stuff like that, but you know, it's not like it's going to be dripping out of the pen. Fountain pen ink is water-based, so it's really not that different to have just straight water than it is to have fountain pen ink. You know, obviously with fountain pen ink, there's different factors. The fountain pen ink dye is a little drier flowing than pure water is, so you'll notice some of those things based on nib width and stuff. But you know, in a brush pen kind of scenario, you're not really going to notice much. It may flow a little wetter than ink would, but a lot of that you can control based on how deeply you're pressing into that brush and the angle you hold it and stuff like that. So yeah, if you want to use it as a watercolor brush, go nuts. I think you can definitely do that. There's a lot of freedom that you have with a brush pen because you aren't subject to this very thin channel that the ink flows through like it does on a fountain pen. In the brush pen, it's literally just like blah, a wad of bristles that are coming out there, and ink can flow through any of those bristles. So it's much easier to work a brush pen in terms of flow than it would be in a fountain pen. Next question I have. Jan S. on Facebook: do you carry, you carry Pelikan inks but not pens. What gives? So yeah, I'm a little perplexed too. I've had, you know, that M800 that I have in my pen case right here. I've had this for 4 years, and you know, I've shown it, I've talked about it a lot. We get a lot of questions about Pelikan pens, but not a lot of people that want to actually buy them from us. So I'm, you know, it's the kind of thing, like, it generates a lot of conversation. I think that the Pelikan pens in general, they are not a value pen. You know, they are not less expensive than they should be necessarily. You're kind of paying a premium for those pens. Like, Pelikan makes good pens, and they know they make good pens, so they charge like they know they make good pens. You know, so you're going to pay $500 or $600 for a nice pen, whereas another brand like Pilot, you can get what I consider to be a pretty comparable quality pen for half the price. So for me, I'm very much a utilitarian. You know, I drive a Pontiac Aztec. I don't have a lot of, you know, ego, status, whatever flashiness. You know, I'm not buying the nicest stuff just because it's the nicest. Sometimes I do that, very rarely though. I'm very just practical, and I think a lot of that is reflected just in the way this company operates, the Goulet pens. We're very practical, so I like things that are a good value. Pilot Metropolitan, for example. This pen really should be closer to $50 in terms of its quality and the way that it writes and some of its features and aesthetic design and stuff like that. Really could be more like $40 or $50. But it's $15. So this pen gets me super excited because it's such a great value, and I talk about it all the time for that reason. So yeah, there are other pens that can write a lot nicer, but if you're going to pay $150 for it, it doesn't excite me quite as much. So, you know, it's that kind of thing. It's really just, it's my opinion about it, and that has been reflected, I think, in some of the supply and demand that we've had with pens like that in that kind of tier, that echelon. You know, once you get into gold nib pens that are more than $250, really, a lot of it just becomes the name, the design, the artistic elements into it. You know, you're not really getting a better writing experience necessarily. Sometimes you can. Sometimes certain nibs and stuff are ground differently that can be really cool like that. But there's a lot of other factors that come into play, and there's a law of diminishing returns, you know, that you pay a whole lot more to move from here to here than you do to move, you know, in the lower price range from here to here. To go from a preppy to a metropolitan, you're jumping up quite a bit in the experience just for a $10 difference. But $10, you know, going from a $150 to a $160 pen, there could be literally no difference at all. So it's just a matter of that kind of thing. So if you're not familiar with the law of diminishing returns, that's kind of how that works. The higher price something gets, the less of a noticeable difference you see with the quality or design of something. So there's a lot of good Pelikan fans out there, but I don't know where they're buying the pens, honestly. I think there's a lot of other established Pelikan retailers. This has just been one area of running this company that has kind of baffled me a little bit. And you know, we've experimented. We carried the full M200 line a couple of years ago, got deep in that. Didn't do that well with them, and then they underwent a price increase, and that pretty much killed it for us. I know they have, like, you know, minimum advertised pricing and stuff, just like most manufacturers do. I see, you know, some challenges with that. It's a global marketplace, so, you know, European retailers and stuff like that are able to sell Pelikans for a lot cheaper than we are here in the U.S. So I know that's a factor as well. You know, and it's just one of those things when you get into these really expensive pens. This isn't just about Pelikan. This is really about anybody. When you get into pens that are in the $500 and $1,000 range, as an online retailer, it gets really tough to try to sell them at, you know, what the manufacturer would like you to sell them. You know, at MSRP is the manufacturer suggested retail price, which pretty much everybody knows stuff doesn't sell for full MSRP, especially online. But when you get into, you know, $1,000 pens and such like this, like a Pelikan M1000 is pushing, you know, somebody else might be selling it $200 cheaper than what I would need to sell it for. And that just gets really tough. So you end up getting all kinds of price wars and stuff with these really expensive pens. And, you know, I just can't, as a retailer, I can't afford to stock multiple $1,000 pens and get undercut by somebody else just because they're, you know, doing, you know, whatever with it. So that kind of stuff happens all the time. New retailers come on the scene, pricing, you know, goes like crazy, and I'm not going to complain too much about that because this is kind of how the retail game works. Anybody who's ever been in retail, you know that price competition happens all the time. It's just part of business. But it gets really hard to compete in that way with these really expensive pens. So I just don't really play that game very much, and I haven't found it to be very advantageous to try to play that game. But really it comes down to supply and demand. You know, we've tried carrying this stuff, we've offered special orders on Pelikans and things like that. Haven't had a lot of people take us up on it. Have had a lot of people ask about Pelikan pens, and then when we give them a price and say, you know, this is, you know, it's going to be $400, they're like, whoa, 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 I didn't know it was going to be that much. Okay, never mind, cancel it. And I'm like, okay. So that's really what it boils down to. You know, I'll supply whatever you guys want to supply, but if you don't want to buy it from me, then I'm not offended by that, but I can't offer it if no one buys it. So that's kind of where I stand there. Paper category. So I only got a couple of paper questions this week. First paper question I have here. This is from Rebecca C. on Facebook. I know a lot of people who like using the field notes, but I can't find an ink that doesn't feather, even with my extra fine vanishing point. Any recommendations? Oh boy. Okay, yeah. So field notes is not like, it's not a fountain pen notebook. It's really not. Their whole slogan is, I'm not writing it down to remember it later, I'm writing it down to remember it now. So, they're not into like the primo ultimate super best paper like you would get with Rhodia, Clairefontaine, that kind of thing. So the paper is slightly more absorbent. They're catering a lot more to like pencils and ballpoints and rollerballs and stuff. Fountain pens are not really their scene so much at all. So they do a lot of really cool stuff with their notebooks, which is why we carry them, is because they just, Aaron Grafflin, who does the design work for them, is just really cool and does a lot of really neat graphic design related things. So that's really cool and it's exciting, and we are interested in that, which is why we carry them. They're not the best fountain pen paper notebooks. That's just straight up, I can say that. That said, with that kind of paper, I find Noodler's Heart of Darkness to work really well. Noodler's Black, X-Feather, all those are pretty solid. The Pilot iroshizuku series tends to do pretty well on cheaper paper. And there's several other like one-offs that are like failing to come to my mind right now, but Heart of Darkness is really kind of like my go-to with the cheap paper, good dry time, things like that. But on those notebooks, some feathering is going to be inevitable. I don't know exactly like to what degree you're experiencing feathering, and with an extra fine vanishing point, that's a pretty fine nib, so you're going to see some feathering and spread and stuff like that on these field notes. So I don't know to what degree you're considering it to be acceptable, but I think Heart of Darkness will help there. Kevin T on Facebook, which papers would be considered archive quality? Most of the ones that we carry at Goulet pens are. Most, nicer kind of premium papers you're going to buy are going to be kind of archival quality. There's two really kind of things that matter the most that I can think with paper archivability. One would be that it's pH neutral. Another is that it's acid free. A lot of times paper manufacturers will advertise that. Sometimes they won't. It's kind of tough. It's not like a standardized thing that they are required to advertise one way or another. So it kind of ends up being hit or miss. Some of the stuff I don't really know, and I need to kind of look deeper into it. I know that like the Rhodia, Clairefontaine, Quo Vadis, Exacompta, all those are made similarly and all have the kind of archival qualities and stuff. A lot of the other ones that we carry do. I'm failing to think, like right now I think Leuchtturm does as well. I'm pretty sure Apica Midori, I'm not sure about that. I don't know about Field Notes or Banded Apple, like some of those ones, the smaller brands. Really not sure. They don't really advertise whether they are or not, which you would kind of just assume maybe that they're not. I don't know. But one thing I've found that matters a lot when storing paper, just blew the punchline there. One thing that matters a lot with archivability is actually how you store it. It's one thing to be pH neutral, acid free, stuff like that. That's really important if you store it properly. If you don't store your paper properly, all that stuff doesn't even really matter that much because it's going to degrade anyway. If you take all your notebooks and you stick them in a shoebox and shove them up in your attic that's 120 degrees every summer, it's not going to last your whole lifetime, probably, I have some of that kind of stuff when I was a kid, just like the cheap composition notebooks that I had when I was writing in school that I wrote in pencil. Like pulled them out of my parents' attic. The paper is all yellow, it's all wrinkly and all that, and it was not stored properly. It wasn't great paper to begin with, but it also wasn't stored properly, so it's degraded quite a bit over 20 years. But, even still, I guess it's not too bad. But if you store it in a cool, dry place, something airtight would be even better, with no moisture in there. So that would be part of it. All right, ink. I have one ink question for this week, so not a whole ton. From Ruchit P on Facebook. Will using deionized water help clean ink from cartridges even better than regular water? Or is there not a big difference? I've never really done any scientific testing on deionized or demineralized or distilled water or whatever versus regular tap water. The thing that I can say is that it's not really going to clean it any better. The reason you use this type of water, deionized or whatever, is because there aren't any minerals and contaminants and stuff in it, as opposed to just regular tap water. Some of that might be in there, especially if you I live in the country, I live on a well, so I have my own filtering system in my garage that I have to filter out all of our water because you're pulling it straight up out of the ground, so there's going to be junk in there. So you got that kind of thing going on. As far as actually getting it cleaner, really, I don't think it makes any difference at all. The difference that it could theoretically make over time is that it would keep minerals from building up in your pen, I guess. But you would need quite a bit of water, because I mean, you're talking like parts per million of some of these particulates, and it's just not that much. And it's not like it's a toilet where you've got, gallons and gallons flowing through every single day, where you're going to see some mineral deposits, calcium and the like, iron and stuff like that, where you can like visibly see deposits that happen over time. In a fountain pen, you're really flowing such little water through there in the grand scheme of things. I think it would take forever for minerals to actually build up on your pen. That would be really not something that I would expect very much. And then if you use any type of a pen flush, like an ammonia-based pen flush, it's going to clean that out of there anyway, if you do that with any kind of regularity. So that's one good thing about using something like a pen flush, is it would get a lot of that junk out of there if there was any kind of a buildup, but you would be talking decades probably before you'd really notice anything. So you're going to probably more other things going on with your pen by the time that would be a factor. So I don't think it's something you need to worry about too much. The only time that really matters, I mean, if you want to be a purist about it, sure, go nuts. But if you want, the only time you really need to be concerned about that is if you are mixing water into your ink. If you're diluting your ink for any reason, then it's a good idea to use something like deionized or distilled water is kind of the standard of what everybody uses. I don't really know the difference between distilled and deionized. I know that deionized is a more fancier filtering system than distilled. You can distill your own water just, pretty easily. Look that up on Google. I won't explain the whole thing, but you can do that. So it's pretty straightforward. If you are going to be mixing water into your ink, then you don't want those contaminants in there because they're going to be sticking around for a while, could react with some of the stuff that's in the ink. Then you want to use something like distilled water. I have one sealing wax question this week from Alexandre J. So Alexander on Facebook asks, do you know about silver and gold metallic ink pads used to make two-tone wax seals? And is there a possibility you could carry them one day? Yeah, the possibility is I could order them today and have them in a week. J.R. Bond has a couple of pads. They've got a couple different products, and now this has actually been a couple of years since I've even looked it up. So I don't know what their current offering is on these ink pads, but I know they had a gold and a silver stamp pad that you would take your wax seal and stamp it into, and then put your wax down, and then you do it so that it's kind of like, what you're sealing has kind of a two-tone effect. They also have a wax seal, a stamp stick, which is like a double-ended stick that's like gold on one side, silver on the other, that's intended for after you do your wax seal, you can then color in the raised portions with that stick. So it's kind of like the reverse of the stamp pad. So they got kind of both ends covered. I never actually used one myself, which is probably just should at this point. I should probably be educated about that. Maybe I'll look into that. But I never really had a lot of people that used them. We did carry them back even, I think it was like the first year we were in business. We carried them because I got all into wax seals. If you look at all my wax seal videos, they're super old and like terrible quality. But, I got really into wax seals right at the beginning when we were getting into this business. And then I pretty much said everything there was that needed to be said about wax seals, except for the stamp pad thing. But then I just left it. So I carried the wax seal pads and stuff like that back then. Didn't sell a lot, but then again, I was a smaller business and wasn't really known for much. So I just wasn't selling a lot of most things anyway. So I don't know. Is there demand for it? You tell me. I don't really know. So if you're really interested in it, maybe I'll look into it and I can carry it. Maybe, I don't know. We sell wax seal stuff here. It's not like flying off the shelf. I like it, so that's why I carry it, and there's enough of a demand for it to make it worth our while, but it's not like we're the Goulet wax seal company. It's not what's keeping our doors open. So it's a kind of a tangent of a product that's already kind of a tangent of the core of what we sell. So there just hasn't been a lot of demand for it. I think you're like maybe the first person in the last 6 months that's asked me about it. So if there is interest about it, please post in the comments. I would love to know. But it's certainly something I could sell. And then I got a couple of troubleshooting questions. Last category for the week. Troubleshooting. So Jessica O on Facebook says, help, I have never had this problem leaking at the grip section of my TWSBI Mini. Did I overfill it, leak, crack? How do I find out where the problem lies? Okay, so I think I might know what's going on. This can happen sometimes, and I have a TWSBI Mini here, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the video and show you what I think is happening. Now, I got to make sure that I'm actually focusing on the pen. I know that's been an issue with some of the demonstrations I've tried to do in the past, and I'll try to learn from that. See, my viewfinder is like really far away, so I can't really see whether this is in focus or not. But anyway, I'm going to give it a shot. So the TWSBI Mini. All right. So I've got a TWSBI Mini here. I got the clear one so that I can really show you what's going on. So if you look at the grip section of a TWSBI Mini, you can actually unscrew the whole thing right off the pen. So that's what I'm going to focus on. So it's in a couple of different parts. So it has this housing, which is basically just the grip. It's the shroud that goes around the actual nib unit itself. The nib unit itself is what screws into the pen body. So the housing literally is just an encasement around the nib unit that allows you to hold so that you're not holding the nib unit itself, because that would be a pretty thin pen. So it's just a shroud. When you are putting that on, there are some little raised portions on the nib housing itself, and there are some indentations on the inside of the grip of the Mini. And they just have to line up, and you can tell if you go to put it together and you just give it a little bit of a twist, it'll kind of seat down properly in place when those two things line up, and then you push it together. There's a little O-ring in there, and that should help. But what happens if you don't have those lined up properly and you push it on there, not only are you putting extra stress around the end of that nib housing, or the nib, I'm losing my terminology, the end of the grip, which is why they have a little metal band there, because on the earlier versions of some of the TWSBI pens, they were experiencing cracking because people weren't aligning them properly, and they were just jamming them on there, and then they were getting stress cracks on the grip itself. So they put a little metal shroud on there so it's not as much an issue. But I think what would happen if you don't have those lined up properly is it wouldn't get seated all the way down in there. And you could either, number one, end up, so when you go to fill the pen, you're dipping the ink, the pen in the ink so that it goes up onto the grip section. You could get ink up into the grip from when you're filling it, or what actually might be more of your issue is if this grip is not seated all the way on there properly, then that means that when you go to actually screw the nib housing into the pen body, if it's not seated all the way on there, it's going to keep the pen from assembling properly. So it's going to keep the nib housing from threading all the way into the body of the pen like it needs to, and you might have some leakage that actually comes down through where the two pieces thread together, and it's going to kind of drip down into here and end up kind of filling up your grip section. And then if you got a little rubber O-ring down here, so it may not actually leak out of the pen, but it would start to fill up the grip, and it would just look really weird and you wouldn't understand what's happening. So I think that's probably what's going on. So take a look at your grip, take the pen apart, clean it all out because you need to anyway, and make sure that that grip is properly aligned. It could also be that you have some kind of crack somewhere in here as well. So take a pen apart and look everywhere you can. If you have a loop, that would be ideal to really be able to look in there and see if you have any kinds of cracks. If you have cracks, then what you'd want to do is reach out to TWSBI, TWSBIinc@gmail.com. But that, I think, is probably your answer just based off of what information that I have right there. All right. Last question for the week. This is another troubleshooting one from PoL on Facebook. How to clean the translucent feed perfectly so that it looks like a new one. Is it possible, like the one on the Platinum Cool? Okay, is it possible? Well, it depends on the pen. You know, if you can get in there and clean it out, that certainly helps a lot. You know, I've got a Platinum Cool right here. I actually have a whole separate video on taking apart a Platinum Cool, so I won't get too much into it. I will zoom in again, so give me 1 second as I get closer in. Hey, what's up? All right, so I got a Platinum Cool. It's a pretty neat pen, and this one, you know, is kind of different. It actually threw me for a loop a little bit. So this one, it's a clear pen. It's got a clear grip, which is really neat, except if you have an ink that's kind of sticky, if you will, it'll kind of turn it the color, and you don't want it to be that color, so you want to clean it out. It's also got a translucent feed, which can be interesting to try to clean out. So most fountain pens, when you can remove the nib and feed, you can usually pull it out like so, but that is not the case with this pen, so don't try that. You will fail. The way that this pen disassembles, you take the body off, and if you notice, there's a set of threads that you can see actually in the grip section. That's because this metal portion right here, which threads onto the body, actually threads into the back of the grip as well, and it just unscrews right out of there. And then you actually take the nib and feed and you push it this way, not pull it like it is on most other pens. So you push it, it can be stuck in there a little bit, so you want to push it. You don't want to push on the tip end because that can bend it. So you can kind of put your fingers in here as close to the base of the nib and the feed as you can and give it a push. And then the whole thing kind of slides out like so. You can take this apart, you know, the nib, you can remove that, I believe, slides off, there you go. So you can clean the nib, you can clean the feed, get all that looking nice, and you can clean inside of the grip here. What I find helps a lot is using a Q-tip to physically get in there and clean out. That helps with some inks. Using a pen flush, an ammonia-based pen flush, can also help a lot. Certain inks like the Bay State Noodler's inks can clean with a bleach-based solution. So try and experiment a couple different things depending on what ink you're using. Do as much research as you can for cleaning out specific inks. And then reassembling it, I show it in more detail in the video, but it has to fit in a specific way, and then you should be pretty much good to go. So if it's another pen that you can't disassemble all the way, that might be a situation where you can only just use a pen flush or something like that. If you can use a Q-tip to try to get in there, that helps more, but that would be my answer for you, Poe. All right, so that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed this one. I'll be back next week for number 71, and then it won't be a bad luck day, so hopefully everything, all the black cats will be out of my path and all the ladders will be put away, I guess. So I have a question of the week for this week. The question of the week, and I would like for you to leave this in the comments on YouTube or on the blog, is how many pens do you normally carry with you? I talked a little bit about my kind of problem of how many pens that I carry with me, but you know, I'm very curious based on, you know, some newer folks that may not see the need to carry more than one pen, you know, just in general how much you know, most of us do. So I'd be very curious to know. So that's the question of the week for this week. I'll be back next week. Hope you enjoyed this. If you have not subscribed already to my YouTube channel, I would love for you to do so. We just broke 21,000 subscribers, which blows my mind because I never ever thought that me to sit in front of camera talking about pens, that we would have 21,000 people that would be interested enough to say, yeah, I want more of this. But that's really cool. So I'll keep it up as long as you like it. If you are a subscriber to the podcast, or if you're not subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and do that because that's cool too. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a wonderful weekend and a great rest of your week. And right on.